Welcome to the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. It's your host, Brian Gatens. As we do during the bigger races, we like to do an in-race flash podcast. This is a somewhat raw, somewhat unfiltered take. Usually we talk to the race director. We might have a racer on, which we do right now. We have Abby Perkiss, who is the race director for the 2025 Endless Mountains race. And then she is with Michael Garrison, who is the executive director of USARA and a retired racer. Not literally retired, not like forever, or maybe he will be. We'll find out. But he has withdrawn from the race due to, I think, a knee injury. And so we have them here for a bit of a live conversation. Abby, what day is it right now? Do you even know yourself?
Yeah, I was just trying to do that math. We are through night 4 and into night 5. We are 5 hours into day 5 right now.
5 hours into day 5. So you yourself have actually crossed a personal threshold of directing a race that has gone past 5 days now.
I think that's right. I find AR math to be really challenging because the number of nights is different from the number of days. So you have to count in 24-hour segments. And I think in 24-hour segments, I'm still in my comfort-ish zone of race directing, but shortly that will be exceeded.
And speaking of exceeding that in expectations, because when we did the Flash podcast all those days ago, back on day 1, 2, right? All those days ago, it feels like 100 years ago to you probably. A lot of people talked about how the going at the 7-day mark was actually a thing for them. Very few of the racers had actually raced more than really 5 days, right? And so we're all in uncharted waters somewhat as race directors and as racers. The race, if people follow the online tracking, and I will tell you, Abby, from the numbers I'm seeing on the Dark Zone and what I'm seeing online, this has proven to be a very, very popular race. People are talking a lot about it, a lot of excitement around it. It is the longest race in America this year, not in North America. The World Championship is a longer race, but this is the longest adventure race taking place in America this year. So we're all very excited for it. So let me ask you a big general question. How's it going so far?
Brian, it's day 5. You can't ask general questions. It's going well. It's going well. We've been dealing with some pretty tough conditions. We had 2 days of 100-degree temperatures. It's like in the high 80s today, so a little bit cooler, but only marginally so. We've had a few really intense storms roll through, and the combination of those two things has slowed the course measurably. So we are behind on time estimates, but teams are managing themselves and managing each other remarkably well. We have had a handful of additional racers have to leave the course for reasons that are non-emergent, right? Everybody's fine. But 34 of the 35 teams are still trucking through the course. And when we see folks, they are tired and a little bit, dehydrated. But they are smiling and they're laughing and they're, just talking about those moments that make them want to keep going. And I think we on the behind the scenes team are having those same experiences right alongside them.
Well, this is where they live now, right? This is their life. Their life is, there's the first day, there's the last day, and there's the big long day in between. And it sounds like what you've done is, and this is not surprising in rootstock racing or to expedition level racing. It's a rolling community. Right? It's people, it's TAs, it's racers, it's volunteers. It's all those people kind of coming together for a compressed period of time. And the circus just keeps rolling forward, right? But alongside that, this is also a race, right? This isn't just we're not just hanging out and chatting away. So let me ask you that now. What is the status of the race so far? Who's your race leader? Who's the chase pack? Give us a sense of where we are in the standings.
Yeah, so we have 4 full course teams left on the course, 4 teams that have done every single checkpoint. Bend Racing, who is racing as 4-hour fuel for this event, is out in front. I'm currently sitting with Garrison at the Craftsbury Outdoor Center, which is the site of our orienteering relay, and they're probably within an hour or so of here. To give some context, the next team, which is Pretty Reckless Vert, is just coming off of, they have probably about an hour left on the section before this. Bend finished that section about 6 hours ago. So the lead is about 6 hours. That has been slowly shrinking. So Bend has had a commanding lead from the start, but Vert is chipping away at it ever so slightly. Bones Adventure is in 3rd place. They were passed by Vert last night And then Strong Machine Adventure Racing is in fourth place in terms of the full course teams. And they are farther back on the course, but they have more checkpoints than the teams in front of them.
Gotcha. And so what we're seeing now is, 4-hour Fuel's doing 4-hour Fuel things, right? They're strong race. They came into TA1 with the commanding lead. They left with the lead, and they are who they are, and they deserve every single ounce of credit they get. They're strong, dominating team, and really amazing to sort of see it unfold. I mean, really just how they put a clinic together at all these races. But Pretty Reckless / Vert is a pretty amazing story from where they were to where they are, which I think their story is a bit of an epitome of adventure racing ethic and core and belief. We will talk about this story a lot in adventure racing lore for quite a while, but can you give an overview of what their TA1 was like and what we all kind of saw there?
Well, yeah, but let me start before TA1. This is a team of 4 athletes who have not raced all together before. Kit Vreeland and Scott Cox are 2 longtime adventure racers. They have been competing with each other and alongside each other for many years. Matt Szymanski and Alyssa Godesky are newer to the sport. Alyssa was a professional triathlete. She holds a number of FKTs. She's, a top fleet athlete. Matt was kind of just at the level below professional athlete, also holds a professional triathlete, also holds a number of FKTs. So these are beasts of athletes, but much less experienced in expedition racing and in adventure racing more broadly. Adding to that, Alyssa is just coming off of a 2-year-long knee injury. And she did 1 race before this, but this really was her, Brian, you love the term white whale. This state is in her backyard, quite literally, actually, though they didn't know that. She and Matt didn't know that coming into the race. We used their house as a volunteer headquarters during the race because it was 5 miles off course. So for Alyssa, it was a real Herculean feat of PT and patience and rehab to get here. And she didn't know going into the race what her knee was going to do. They had a great first trek, and they came into TA1 and discovered that Scott's through axle, his rear skewer, was missing. And so some teams would have said, well, there's nothing we can do. Other teams would have said, well, we're just going to wait until all the other teams roll in and see if somebody has something we can borrow. What Vert did was they said, okay, now what? What are we going to do from here? And they, again, all really strong athletes. They took 4 bikes, 3 of which were rideable, and went down about 8 miles to the town of Rutland. So they traded off who was running and pushing a bike and who was spinning. And they made it to an Ace Hardware store. And they got the Ace Hardware store to open a little bit early. And Matt, who is he used to be a professional bike engineer, actually, was able to essentially MacGyver a new through axle using zip ties and bolts. And due to the wonders of tracking, I was able to meet them down there and see this in action. And it was a sight to behold. Having raced with Matt, I know how his brain works and how good at problem solving he is. And that was on full display there. And they've just been slowly working their way up the course since then.
And so in reality, they could have just said, oh, well, broken bike, game over, and off we're going to go, right? But they clearly, these people of their caliber, all 4 of them, quit really isn't part of their jargon, right? And there's actually a bit more of a code to that story because I saw them leave TA1 running with the bikes. And then 20 minutes later, we saw them run back into TA1 because they left their tracker behind. And
you know what? There were 2 teams that are now on the full course who had both a mechanical and a gear-related issue in TA1. Strong Machine was the other one. They left TA1 3 times, I think. They left once, came back for, I don't know if it was a tracker or something else that was in a bin. Then they came back realizing that Kate had a flat tire that they just could not fix. And they spent, a good half hour in TA trying to resolve that. And then ultimately you have Glenn hammering the tire to try to get it to reseal. They were able to get to get a new tube in. It was tubeless, and they were able to put a tube in and get it to beat and continued on. But both of those teams, that could have been the unraveling. And in, Strong Machine also, they have a person, Kara, this is her first expedition race. And instead, they used it as a moment to like pause and reset their intention and say, we're doing this, like we are racing. And that was physical, that was mental, that was mechanical, but that was also emotional. I had a volunteer tell me, I don't know, 47 hours ago, that they watched Vert kind of come together in a little group huddle and talk about how proud they were of each other. And I don't think they would be uncomfortable with me sharing that. Like, it was a real moment of like, let's uplift each other here and let's remind ourselves why we're doing this and how much we have done between Saturday at 10 a.m. and now.
Both those situations were a masterclass in remaining calm and composed in trying situations, right? Because all the factors are there. You're tired, you're hungry, you're cold, you want to get going, you're racing, and things kind of turn sideways on you. But and we don't talk a ton about this in the dark zone, but it's true that like there's so much of a life lesson that's being involved there, right? When things are going haywire, running around in circles is not going to help you. You're controlling yourself, a thoughtful, measured approach, doing what you have to do to go forward, and then realizing that that's what's going on. And then you're able to reset yourself. And here now, both of those teams that had these really, really challenging, emotional, teamwork, gear-based, now they're chugging their way through the course. Go, 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 go. We're to the point where, I heard correctly, that Pretty Reckless Vert is sitting in second place. You're right. So now they're in second place. Yeah. And those of you who want to listen to this, I'm going to put on Feisty Triathlon. Alyssa did an interview with them before the race. And in that interview, and the link will be in the show notes, she talked about her goals as an adventure racer. And she's starting to dance around those goals as a result of all of this. So thank you for that update. Thank you for where we are. We're going to come back to you in a second, but we have Garrison sitting just to your left. Garrison was a member of the 4-person team, Silent Honey Badgers. I had a chance to interview them as part of our TA1 Voices of the Racers. And, solid TA1 interview. Garrison now is withdrawn from the race due to, I believe we've identified as a leg knee situation. Good to see you don't look like you're in too much pain there, Garrison. If you can, share us about your race up until this point.
Yeah, it was, I think everybody's been pretty aware that it's a big course and it's a challenging course. And it's the kind of race that a couple small things going wrong for you can balloon to bigger things, pretty quickly. We struggled the first couple days, and our strategy had been to go for the full course until we were off timetable, and then start dropping points. And in hindsight, which is always the easiest way to make these kind of analyses, probably not the best strategy, just because it's hard to claw time back on this big of a course, even if you start dropping optional points. All in all, we were doing well as a team. We had chosen to sleep a lot this race. That's another reason that we probably should have been a little bit more conservative up front. But because of that, we felt good. It was a little frustrating that with all the sleep and being generally coherent mentally, still made some blunders those first couple of days. I had a knee that was a little swollen after the first trek, but it's 40 miles and been bothering me for a little while now. I wasn't super concerned, but kind of progressively got worse until last night in the gorge. Textbook rootstock rocks and water section of the course, which was pretty awesome. Nothing major, just kind of tweaked it a little bit. We slept for a few hours, and I think we got maybe 10 or 15K out of TA this morning, and it just wasn't working. It was slowing down. It was really painful. I tried the meds and all that good stuff. I had a calf sleeve up over my knee to try and stabilize it, and I think it's time for a trip to the doctor. But the other three, they kind of rallied. They had their conversation. What are we going to do now? Got a little information from Abby about what the rest of the course was going to look like. And they're out there now. I think they're working their way to TA4, planning to continue on the course as much as possible, obviously, with mandatory points. And they're in this for 7 days of experience, and that's what they're going to get.
Which, once again, speaks to the idea of the culture of adventure racing. That so now because of their status, they're now an unranked team, right? You need to get across the finish line with the entire team in place. The three of them could have said we're out also, but instead they want the experience, they want the adventure, they want the growth that comes from being, on a course like this. They wish you well, obviously, but also the fact that they're now heading out on the course says something, because where they're going to kind of fall in the standings. but they want to get the whole experience. They want to see all of that. Let me ask you, you've done rootstock races before, you've done expedition level races before. You knew this was going to be a big course, right? You knew it was, I mean, Abby and Brent don't put together small courses. Talk to me a bit about your personal experience on the course. Did you find it, did it live up to what you thought it was going to be like? Was it as difficult as it was? What parts did you find really enjoyable? Like, walk us through your experience.
Yeah, I mean, having done the races before, you do get a feel for kind of the personality of their events, of any race director's events. And I've known Brent Abbey pretty well for a while, done a fair number of their events. And it was what you expected, supersized, if you want to put it that way. If you take the time, and it's hard not to if you've directed races, to think about the course design, you can see, oh, I see what they were thinking there, what they want to do, kind of how things flowed together. And it's it doesn't take much lack of discipline for you to all of a sudden start paying a price, which is why the teams up at the top, it's so impressive as to how they're doing, because you have to stay sharp with what the course gives you, but then to be able to do it with things like bike mechanicals and still stay on it. Kudos to them for keeping it together. But it's big. I mean, it feels like we've raced a day for each or stage, I think, when we started. It's between the heat and the rainstorms, it's always interesting as well. But I think teams are enjoying a pretty spectacular experience.
Great. Well, Garrison, glad you're there. Glad you're well. Like I said, a visit to the doctor to get the knee sorted out, but you'll be back soon enough. And glad that you're one piece, and thanks for coming on to the show.
Yeah,
I'm taking it back over to you. We talked a bit about those teams that are in the pointy end of the field, right? And who's the remaining full course teams. So far, they've punched every checkpoint. They visited every TA. Talk to us a bit about what you're seeing in the larger swath of the race, the mid-pack and the back of the pack teams. And for the listeners at home, I want to be fair to Abby here. We're talking like 30 teams that are out there right now. So it would be unfair to ask any race director to sort of go through each of the teams and talk about them. But the breadth of the experience, what are you seeing out there with the racers who really aren't fighting for the podium, but they're not coming off the course and they're fighting through it? What's your experience been like there?
Yeah, I'm not going to call out specific teams, but I am going to talk about the general kind of ethos of the field. And it's one that has held true through each of the 3 editions of Endless Mountains. And I actually said to, I think it was Misguided at the end of the first track at TA1. He said, when you signed up for this race, you signed an implicit contract to make smart decisions. And so we're going to hold you to that, because Endless Mountains racers have a track record of that. And, I was joking with him, but it's true. Like, we have people that come to our events who, whether it's because, a self-selecting group, or they hear enough about them, or just adventure racers are good at, moderating themselves, they're really good at deciding what parts of the course are right for them. So we have some folks out here who are like, we decided from the start, we're not even going to worry about what's mandatory or optional. We are going to enjoy the journey, and we are going to do it smartly and safely and within our abilities. And they are making it to the finish line, toward the top of the field. They are doing exactly what they came here to do. And there's other folks, Garrison's team among them, but there's many others who have been racing for years and years and years. And they're some of the most experienced folks in the sport. And they similarly, we are here with an adaptive set of expectations. Mm-hmm. So we know what to do when the weather gets crummy. We know what to do when we have a mechanical. We know what to do when there's a storm and we need to take shelter. And we are going to evolve our course plans as a result. We have, I think, 3 days left of the race. Again, a little bit hazy right now. But what I am seeing now shows me that everyone who's out on the course has the ability and wherewithal to make it to the finish line from here. We're helping them along a little bit with that. Because the conditions have slowed the course so much, we have modified the route of travel. So there was a section up in the northeast quadrant of the course, this pretty iconic site called J Peak. And we have a nice small but burly foot section embedded there, half of which was optional and half of which is mandatory. And we have made the whole section optional. So teams now will leave the site Garrison and I are at now, Craftsbury Outdoor Center, and they will make a decision whether or not to go to J at all. And then the first half of the 50-mile paddle, that is the penultimate stage of the race, we are actually going to have racers bike through that and get to the town of Swanton and get on their canoes there and just paddle the Lake Champlain and then do the final bike and trek. So it's a beautiful area. We would love to have racers get to see the full expanse of it, but we also want people to feel successful on the course and to be able to get to the finish line under their own power. And Brent and I talked endlessly to each other. We talked to folks here who are volunteering, who are also race directors. And this felt like a really good way. We're not worried about the top of the field, but we really want the rest of the field to be able to make it in on their own power. And this kind of choose your own adventure format felt like the right way to do that.
Yeah, clearly what's going to happen is you're going to run out of time. You're not going to run out of road. You're going to run out of time, right? And if I'm correct, I think it ends at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning. Am I correct? That's the time you want everybody in by?
Correct.
Yeah. So now it's Wednesday at 3:30. So Wednesday into Thursday, Thursday into Friday, Friday into a part of Saturday.
Right.
So you're really like 50 or 60 hours left. And so and the teams have to get around. I'm looking at the tracking map right now. You know, they're obviously they're going on, say, counterclockwise, while they have more of the miles behind them. It looks like they're halfway through the course. I know J Peak is off, and I know that, but it feels, when you look at it, they still have a lot of road left they get to get around. So to your point, taking out the Packraft, taking out J Peak is going to help get them down the course faster.
I had that same reaction looking at the tracking map a few hours ago. I was like, whew, they have a lot of road left to travel.
Yeah. So I was actually talking to so as you well know, the dot watching is intense, right? For people who are working this week, productivity has gone through the floor. It's probably going to show up in national economic data, how little work people are doing. The question I have for you is there a thought that people are just going to go right across the state and right back to Burlington and skip that entire upper section? Or are you expecting them to go through those TAs to be official finishers?
I think we're going to see official finishers here.
Yeah.
I think
okay.
The last, that paddle on the lake and then the bike off of the lake back to town, we have really tried to highlight that as like a not miss section. And I think teams are really excited for those stages. And they have a ton of time to get themselves there. Like, we are not even halfway through. Like, we have more than half of a usual endless mountains before they have to get there, right? When you put it that way.
Yeah, they'll be fine.
We have half an expedition race left.
And also, too, is and those who've raced expedition races will relate to this, eventually get it in your teeth. That you're like, if I'm doing all this work, if I'm turning myself inside out, and I'm taking all of the adjustments that the race director is giving me, I'm not going to self-select myself out of being an official finisher by taking a route that's going to take me off the course so far that I don't qualify. So people are going to fight to hold on to that official finisher status. And you can see that. And to that point, I just want to clarify for the listeners, and if I am wrong walking away from this, there's full course teams, folks who get every single checkpoint. Then there are official finishers. They get the mandatories and they get the TAs. Am I correct about that? That's how we're defining it for this race?
There's actually kind of three categories. So there's full course. That's easy, right? They get every single checkpoint and every single TA, and they make their way to the finish in 168 hours. Then there's short course teams, right? So teams that are leaving optional checkpoints on the course, but they are doing the entire mandatory route as intended, or now as slightly modified. And then there are official finishers, which are the folks that get through the entire thing on their own power, TA to TA. So those are kind of the three categories we see. And then we have one DNF and a handful of unofficial teams as well. But again, they're still making their way through the course too.
And I got to tell you, Abby, I was at that TA one, right? And I spoke to every single team. I spoke to the front team and I spoke to the last team. And who I saw come off the water, who I saw leave the TA, if I would not have bet you at that point that we would have seen one full team retirement and four teams. I think it's four teams. Four teams have our 4 or 5 are unranked because of teammates dropping.
It also speaks to the team we have supporting the race. And I can't speak highly enough about the behind the scenes crew. We have, and I've been taking notes in my car, on voice to text on the notes app as I'm driving, of things that I want to highlight for racers at the post-race party. So you guys will get a little preview of that. We have, I think, all told, for the people that are out just this week, that doesn't include anybody who helped remotely, that doesn't include anybody who helped in the before and after, more than 50 people supporting this event. We have 118 racers on the course. That is essentially a 2-to-1 ratio.
Right.
Now, when we think about adventure racers and kind of who they become over the course of the race, you start as adults, and by day 5, you're maybe in like kindergarten territory.
Right.
We judge schools. One of the measures of ratings for schools is the ratio of caregivers to students. And I think we can judge. I'm not talking about the caliber of the race. I'm not talking about the direction of the race. I'm not talking about me and Brent as organizers. But I think we can judge the experience that teams are having based on the level of care they are getting along the way. And it is second to none. It is. We had Gmara out for 36 hours making made-to-order smoothies when the temperatures reached 100 degrees. You can't compare.
Yeah, and I think to that point, when I discussed the 7-day race idea with teams in that first episode, the Voice of the Racers, a lot of them talked about how they're really racing for checkpoint to checkpoint, but also TA to TA, right? And they know that if they get their next TA, there's a reset button. They're able to get some food, some drink, but also to your point regarding the quality of the caliber of the volunteer staff and the volunteer staff around them, they get a shot of adrenaline that comes from someone like cheering them on, right? Bringing the stoke is what we say in racing, right? The idea that someone is there, like, going to do great, keep rolling, here we go. That thing rolls forward. And that's clearly, there's no doubt in my mind that there are people that go into those TAs and they want to stop racing. And some volunteer says to them, something, catch your breath, get a bite, change your socks, maybe change your clothes, take a nap, and we'll see what that looks like. And then by the time they're done doing that, the thought of the finish line wakens back inside of it, and they get back on the course. And so I agree with you that a huge component in this is the quality of the volunteer staff. And I've been privy to the messaging that's flying around, and the level of logistical challenges is just really something else. It feels like you're marching an army around. I mean, just the buses, the trucks, the gear, all of that. And so I think that's a credit to the race. It's credit to the people, and credit to who Rootstock Racing brings out for this. They bring out the kind of people that want to help out.
Well, and just as many have a breath and take a sandwich as you're seeing out on the course, you're seeing, hey, let me give you a hug. Right. Hey, let's share a tear. Right. There are really deep moments of connection happening, between Bren and me and the racers, and between every single support person out there and the teams.
Yeah, there's an amazing human dynamic that it's not only in adventure racing, a lot of other areas too, but when human beings share stressful situations that ultimately end up being victorious or being very, very, they're challenging, there's a bond that exists between those people that doesn't exist in any other way. Like, they have a common shared experience, and all of these racers are kind of having it together. I will ask you this. What looks really interesting here is I'm looking at the tracking map. It feels like the race is kind of a big cluster. Are you having big groups and TAs, people intersecting with each other in the transition areas? Is that, or is the map not really showing me because of the tracking might be off?
No, I think that's accurate. We are seeing, those few teams up at the front, but then 2 or 3 big groupings of teams that are all interacting with each other, both on the course and in TAs. And we're seeing them swap stories and swap snacks and talk about mapping strategy in the TAs with each other, not just within a team, but among teams. The nice thing right now is that the lead teams, 2 years ago at the last edition of Endless, essentially we had a support crew for the lead team and then a support crew for everybody else. And it's not that spread out this time that we need that. We actually expected the course to spread as it went. And I think for a variety of reasons, the tail got long very quickly, but it has come back together. So we are now kind of within a 24-hour window for all teams, and we expect the finish line to be roughly a 24-hour window at all, which feels really good. And as you said, the logistics are a bear and a half. And Paul, our videographer, is actually working now on putting together one of his dailies specifically about the behind-the-scenes antics, but it's a little bit more manageable to do all of that within a 24-hour window at the end, kind of that frenzy versus a 48, which is what we were expecting.
And to give you a sense of that, for the, when we do the Voice of the Racers podcast in the beginning, I always do it near the front of the race, before, either at the first TA, before the first TA, because the crowd gets further apart as the race goes on. And this race relatively close. It's a shame. I think the Voice of the Racers would be rather interesting at this point, but a 24-hour gap between the first and last is actually super close in adventure racing terms. Like, there are some races that it's an even bigger gap there. So it speaks to how the field is moving together and how they're taking care of each other along the way. Recognizing that you're sitting inside the experience right now, it's not really a time for reflection, right? That's going to be, the week after the race. That's going to be the month after the race when you have a chance to sit back and think about it. But this is your third time, playing a role in directing an endless mountains race. Anything different jumping out at you about this experience as compared to the other two?
I can't remember if you quoted me this at the beginning of the race, Brian, or somebody else did, but I think the biggest thing that I am taking away right now, and this is more logistical than emotional, but it fills both spaces, is that 7 is not 5+2. And the pacing of a 7-day race is really different from a 5-day race for the racers and for the staff. And we're seeing that in spades across the course. So like the burn is slower and the stamina has to be deeper, but the moments of frenzy are just as punctuated.
Right.
So we need to find different ways to recover. And the racers are taking more sleep. The racers are stopping more. They are using, the natural spaces at their disposal to cool off, to take shelter. They're drawing on the immense kindness and generosity of spectators, unwitting and otherwise, across the course. Yesterday during the storm, we had 4 teams out on the paddle boards on the lake, and the storm crossed right over. And, I'm driving around the lake trying to find people. And it turns out that half of them are sheltered on people's porches. During one of the bike legs, we had racers stop and swim in someone's pool, raid their fridge, not because they weren't closing, but because people are just like, hey, come in. What can I offer you?
So they told the person they were swimming in the pool. The person they knew, they didn't just abandon a pool.
Absolutely. They were offered the pool. And that literally has been since day one. The first leg was pretty wildernessy. So there weren't a lot of people to interact with. But since then, that has been the case.
Well, that was one thing as I was chatting with racers in TA1, they were commenting on, especially the Vermont people who were familiar with it. They were saying how they were having seen the course, they knew they were going to pass by a lot of civilization and a lot of people, and they were going to see a lot of different things. And as a result, they'd have a different experience because the other Endless Mountains races were just, you were out there. Like you'd be out there for days and never see another person. Here, it's the villages, it's the stores. It's this idea that they could move at a pace. They can get from section to section to section with a lot of civilization along the way. Not that there isn't remote sections, but that's the way it goes. Say a bit more about the intersection of the racer and the private citizen, because I think that's an interesting thing to talk about. What else have you seen when it comes to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same, but it's a lot of the examples that I just gave you. The people coming out onto their porches and cheering folks on, so many people asking questions and then saying, well, like, hey, I have a house down the road if you guys, coming into a TA, right, spending 4 hours talking to race staff and then saying, well, racers can just use my water jugs or my water spigot, and you can fill your water jugs at this spigot. And I feel like every 15 miles, we as staff are encountering that and racers are encountering that.
That trail magic is existing up all around. The race brings something out of people, and people love it, right? We've seen that before, that private citizens, they absolutely get a kick out of it. What's going on? They love asking about it. And it's a great experience all around.
And it brings into the local economy too, right? Yes. There's a 3-minute video circulating of Vert meandering through a gas station or something, just like, I don't know, pouring their entire bank accounts into the snack.
Well, the best part, they fill the entire counter up, and the person on the counter goes, "Is that it?" Like as if like, what else do you want to put on here?
Speaking from experience, not only do they ask, is that it? They ask if you want a bag, and we say, no, it's not even going to make it out the door. I think our record was $63 in a gas station for this trip. So,
and we actually had one racer who was feeling pretty crummy, stopped at a gas station to refuel, and they didn't charge him.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow, they just saw the way they were. Have any racers done the hotel option?
There have been several hotels on the course. In the town of Rutland, we had a handful of folks in a hotel. In the town of Hartford, we had some people in a hotel. But I will say, like, the racers that are making those decisions, that's paying dividends for them. They're moving well. They're taking the time to manage themselves, to recover. And you see that in the way they're moving across the course.
Well, that's the big adventure racing lesson here for the people who are looking at expedition level races. And it doesn't apply to the 7-day race or the 10-day race, also the 5-day races that we're learning more and more is that emphasizing rest over grounding yourself into a nub. We're seeing more and more time that the rest is the way to go. And I'm really curious about that pointy end of the race. Like, we know that 4 Hour Fuel has that big lead, and we recognize that, but definitely decisions have to be made around what to do and how to rest. And it's going to be curious to see how the top of that podium breaks out, right? Because there's while there's not a huge race between 1 and 2, there's a race between 2 and other people. So I'll be curious what decisions are made there as the race continues.
Well, and again, there's 2 hours and 2 days and 18 hours worth of racing left. And
a lot of time.
We would love to see Bend back on the podium. 4 hours, but we love those guys. But also a lot can happen in close to 3 days. And so it's not a foregone conclusion that they will be the first team to cross.
Exactly. Right. It is what it is right now at 3:43 on a Wednesday. We'll see what it's like at 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Any other closing thoughts, Abby?
Well, I'm reflecting on what we were told. A local guy came over yesterday right after the storm and said, if you don't like the weather in Vermont in the summer, he said, this is Vermont in the summer for you. If you don't like the weather, wait 10 minutes. And I feel like that's what we're experiencing on the course. There's these moments of, oh my God, how are we going to do this? And that's for staff and that's for racers. But then those are just the punctuation marks to kind of moments where we're riding out the highs and we're seeing all of what Vermont has to offer and all of what this community has to offer.
And just to finish on a technical note, you shared the changes between Jay Peak and about the pack ref. That's been shared. That's on social media. And for those who have friends, loved ones on the course right now, the tracker, as I'm seeing, is up to speed, right? The unranked teams are there. The retired team is there. And so if they're listening to this and if they're looking at the tracker, their loved ones are out racing. Like, they're on the course and they're moving along, right? And so clearly there's one of these situations that where they can feel comfortable as they try to pull data out of the various social media posting and out of the tracker. All is well, and racers are racing, and they should just enjoy the race as they watch it from a distance.
Yeah, I think the one thing that is still unofficial is the rankings and the number of checkpoints, and all of that has to be verified by, manually with passports and cross-referenced with the tracking map. So I wouldn't necessarily take that as gospel, but if the dot's moving, your family's doing well.
Exactly. Garrison, I want to give you the last word here. You're the real hero of the podcast. I slug it out for a bunch of days and you got a wonky knee. Take us away. Close us out.
So I've learned something about myself that day 2 is always my worst day. I go through the darkest moments of thinking, why am I doing this, both this event and why am I doing it this sport? But I know it passes. And the exact same thing happened in this race. I just had a really low spot. I had a little bit of a bobble on a point that was entirely self-inflicted damage. Came around and started really having fun. And I still had the thought, man, I don't know if I want to volunteer next time this race comes around or if I'm going to want to race again. That's not why I decided to have my knee explode on me, but I'd now get to volunteer for a few days so I can do a little bit of both this year. So kind of excited to get caught up with what everybody knows about the race, since I don't know much of anything besides what my team did. And then, see how the next 3 days goes.
We are going to, for his comfort, not because he smells, get him a shower and a bed for the night
because
before
I
he comes back.
Well, always leave them laughing, right, folks? Thank you to Garrison and Abby for coming on to the show. A great update from the course itself, and thank you to them for making the time to do it. The episodes around the adventure race always prove popular, whether it be a course reveal, followed by a Voice of the Racers, followed by a Flash podcast. We'll do something towards the end as well with one of the teams. We appreciate you being here. A lot of folks are logging in and downloading and paying attention. So it's great to see all of the interest in a race as exciting and the Endless Mountains Adventure Race. So click, and subscribe. And if you remember, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking.